she didn't know his name. She didn't know where he came from. All she knew was that every day at 6 p.m., rain or shine, he sat on the same bench by the corner of Elmwood Park, his back hunched, his hands cracked from the cold, and his eyes distant, as if staring at something long gone. Most people walked past him like he didn't exist. But for Sarah Bennett, he wasn't invisible. And what she didn't know was that her simple kindness would eventually rewrite the course of her life. Sarah was a 28-year-old single mother, raising her 7-year-old son, Jacob, in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Chicago. Life hadn't been easy for her. Her husband, David, died in a car accident just 3 weeks before Jacob was born. Since then, Sarah had been a fighter, juggling 2 part-time jobs, attending night classes to complete her nursing degree, and trying to be the best mother she could be. Her mornings started before dawn, and her nights ended well past midnight. But even in the midst of her struggles, Sarah had something rare, a heart that couldn't ignore the suffering of others. Every day, as she walked home from her shift at the diner with Jacob by her side, she would pass by the old man on the bench. At first, it was just a glance. Then, one evening, she paused, looked into her paper bag, and handed him a wrapped sandwich. "It's fresh," she said softly. "And I added a bit of extra mustard. I don't know if you like it, but it's how I like mine." He looked up slowly, his eyes watery but grateful, and nodded without saying a word. That simple act became a ritual. Every evening, without fail, Sarah would bring him food, sandwiches, soup, or leftover pie from the diner. Sometimes a hot coffee, sometimes a small blanket when the nights grew colder. Jacob even started drawing pictures for the man, often scribbling, "God bless you," in his uneven handwriting. Still, the man never spoke. He just listened, nodded, and sometimes offered a slight smile. Over time, Sarah began talking to him, not expecting answers, but simply sharing pieces of her day, her frustrations, her fears. "I'm trying to get that scholarship," she'd say. "Just need a few more credits and I can apply to the hospital program." Or, "Jacob's growing up so fast. He said he wants to be a firefighter now." The old man never interrupted, but Sarah could sense he was listening, deeply, intently. One day, Sarah found herself laid off from the diner. The new management had cut hours and she wasn't on the list to keep. With rent looming and groceries already stretched thin, she felt panic creeping into her bones. That evening, she stood by the fridge with only 2 sandwiches left. She looked at Jacob. He was hungry. Then she looked at the bench outside the window. She took both sandwiches, cut them in half, wrapped one half for the man, and handed the rest to Jacob. As she placed the sandwich in the old man's hands, her voice cracked. "I lost my job today," she said, her eyes stinging. "But I'll figure it out. Somehow." That was the first time he spoke. In a voice low and worn, he said, "You always do." Sarah froze. "You can talk." He nodded slightly, eyes locked on hers. "I listen more than I speak. But you've said enough to show me who you really are." She didn't understand. But she felt something shift in that moment. The next day, the bench was empty. And the day after that. A week passed, and Sarah feared the worst. She even checked nearby shelters and hospitals, but there was no trace of him. It unsettled her, but life didn't pause. She kept pushing through, applying for jobs, attending classes, holding on to hope like a lifeline. 2 weeks later, a black car pulled up in front of her apartment as she returned from school. A sharply dressed man stepped out and approached her. "Miss Sarah Bennett?" he asked. "Yes. I work for Mr. William Grayson. He would like to see you." Her heart stuttered. "Who?" The man handed her a small, gold-embossed card. On it was the name, William Grayson, CEO, Grayson Holdings. She blinked. There must be a mistake. I don't know any. Please, the man said gently. He insists. Against her instincts, she agreed, mostly because Jacob looked thrilled at the idea of riding in a limousine. They were taken to a towering building downtown. At the top floor, she was led into a sprawling office filled with light, glass walls, and expensive furniture. And there he was. Standing by the window in a tailored suit, no longer hunched or wearing tattered clothes, was the man from the bench. Her mouth opened, but no words came. He turned and smiled. Hello, Sarah. She felt her knees buckle. You're Mr. Grayson. He nodded. I was undercover. I do it every winter. Disguise myself and live on the streets. Not to prove anything. Just to remember. Remember what? What it feels like to be invisible, to have nothing. To rely solely on the mercy of strangers. He walked closer, his eyes warm. I've met many people. Some kind. Some indifferent. But never anyone like you. She was speechless. You gave when you had little. You shared your food. Your warmth. Your son's drawings. You didn't ask for anything in return. You just gave. Tears welled in her eyes. That's rare, Sarah. And I want to help. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I didn't do it for help. I did it because no one should be hungry. I know. That's why you're exactly who I want to support. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's life transformed. Grayson offered her a full scholarship to complete her nursing degree, funded entirely by his foundation. He provided a stable job once she graduated and even helped her find a better home for her and Jacob. But he didn't just offer charity, he built a mentorship program in her name, the Sarah Project, designed to recognize ordinary people doing extraordinary acts of kindness. Months later, Sarah stood at a podium in front of a large crowd, accepting an award for community service. She looked out at the faces, some she knew, many she didn't. With tears in her eyes, she said, I didn't think a sandwich could change a life. But kindness, real kindness, it ripples. What you give may seem small, but to someone else, it can be everything. Don't wait for perfect moments. Just do what you can, when you can, with what you have. Because you never know whose life you're touching. In the audience, William Grayson smiled, clapping softly. And beside him, Jacob held up one of his old drawings, a picture of the man on the bench, smiling, with a sandwich in hand, and a heart above his head.